Welcome to this explainer on Achilles and Greek glory. This story starts over 3,000 years ago on the shores of Troy, right in the middle of this massive, legendary conflict we call the Trojan War. But we're not just going to talk about a historical siege today, we're going to dive into a universal human fear that honestly still echoes right now, the fear of being completely forgotten. To really get our heads around this, we've got to focus on one of the most famous figures in ancient mythology, Achilles. He wasn't just some ancient guy with a spear, right? He was the absolute greatest of all the Greeks who sailed to Troy. And as we'll see, his story is the ultimate test case for a life defined entirely by the pursuit of eternal significance.
So let's just pause and ask the big question. What is a life worth if literally no one remembers it? For Achilles, this wasn't just a philosophical debate. He explicitly faced this dilemma because of a prophecy from his mother, the sea goddess Thetis. She basically told him, look, you have a fork in the road here. He could choose to stay home, avoid the war, and live a really long, peaceful, but entirely forgotten life, or he could sail to Troy, die young on the battlefield, and win eternal glory. That choice right there, that anchors his entire narrative. It's the exact intersection where immense skill, fierce pride, public honor, and the really heavy reality of mortality all just crash into each other. For his life to truly matter, he had to step right into the blinding light of history, fully knowing the fatal cost. To truly grasp the weight of that choice, we really need to understand what Greek glory, or kleos in ancient Greek, actually meant back then. It was basically a lasting public memory, a distinctly human answer to mortality. This wasn't just modern ego or simple vanity. These ancient heroes recognized a brutal truth: everybody dies. And in their belief system, there was no guaranteed blissful afterlife waiting for them. It didn't matter how strong, wealthy, or beautiful you were, you couldn't stop the inevitable. So glory became this desperate substitute for permanence. Having your deeds sung about by bards and poets, that was the only true form of immortality they had. It was a way of escaping disappearance, kind of like carving your name deep into a stone monument just to resist being completely erased by time.
There was this deeply held belief that a spark in your hand is just not enough. It literally has to catch in the minds of others. Glory was an intensely, almost completely social fire. Think about it. The strongest or bravest warrior alive absolutely could not secure their own legacy in isolation. It only became real when an audience of friends, the wider community, and even their enemies actually witnessed the deeds, validated them, and passed them on through stories. For a hero's name to survive the centuries, the community and the poets themselves had to survive to carry that torch. A hero was constantly measured by the world around him, relying entirely on other people to keep his flame alive.
Now, we often tend to blur the concepts of honor and glory together today, but in the ancient world, they were completely different beasts. Honor was the present-day payment. We're talking immediate respect, high status, and the physical prizes that a warrior commanded right then and there on the battlefield. It was the cash in hand. Glory, on the other hand, was the future record and the long-term preservation of that worth. While honor was the fleeting applause and the tangible rewards you could hold in the moment, glory was the enduring legacy etched into history. It's like honor is the foundation you lay today, but glory is the great structure built to stand long after the builder is gone. One is the immediate proof of value, and the other is the permanent record.
Because glory depended so heavily on the audience witnessing it, the Greek camp at Troy was an unbelievably competitive environment. It was quite literally a marketplace of reputation. To succeed, a hero had to be the absolute best among his rivals, no exceptions. Achilles faced this intense tension constantly, especially with Agamemnon, the commander-in-chief of the Greek forces. They were locked in this endless struggle over authority and recognition. Who fights better? Who commands more respect? In this marketplace, the product being bought and sold was reputation itself. They had to constantly stand out against their peers, which made their public status feel absolutely existential. Any slight, any attempt to replace them was just completely unbearable.
Public recognition acted like a giant emotional mirror for these guys. But it didn't just reflect a physical face. It dictated a hero's entire worth. If that mirror reflected respect, the hero stood tall with immense pride. But if it reflected contempt, it produced devastating shame and anger. And actually, this is the exact inciting incident of the famous epic poem, the Iliad. Agamemnon publicly dishonors Achilles by taking away his earned war prize, a woman named Briseis. By pulling rank and stripping Achilles of his prize, Agamemnon essentially shatters that mirror. Suddenly, the reflection shows contempt instead of respect, and that ignites an explosive, catastrophic wrath that fundamentally alters the entire course of the Trojan War.
So, for Achilles, the guiding question suddenly becomes, what kind of life is actually worth remembering? After being publicly insulted by his commander, Achilles takes drastic action. He doesn't just brush it off and get back to work. No, he retreats to his tents and completely refuses to fight. Period. And this massive withdrawal forces the entire Greek army to grapple with this exact question of worth. Achilles starts measuring every single action against the permanent public story his life is becoming. If the immediate honor system is corrupt and his rightful prizes can just be snatched away by a jealous boss, then what on earth is the point of risking death? Every choice he makes from this moment on is a critical, calculated part of crafting that final legacy.
Because of this intense public measurement, Achilles treated honor like a fragile wax seal on an official document. If that seal is broken by public disrespect, the whole document is basically void. It's no longer trusted. And the consequences of this broken seal spread way beyond Achilles himself. His refusal to step onto the battlefield leads to absolutely devastating losses for the Greek forces. Without their greatest warrior, the Greeks are pushed all the way back to their ships, staring absolute destruction in the face. The broken seal of his honor directly causes the deaths of his comrades, vividly illustrating the immense, destructive weight of a hero's wounded pride, and the far-reaching impact when a social contract is completely fractured.
The sequence of his emotional engine plays out so tragically here. First, immense status is threatened. Then, the threat becomes deeply personal. That leads to withdrawal and resistance, and finally, the entire world deeply feels the loss of his presence. But this sequence eventually culminates in a totally catastrophic turning point. Achilles' closest companion and beloved friend, Patroclus, begs to go into battle wearing Achilles' armor, just to save the burning Greek ships. Tragically, Patroclus is killed by the Trojan prince, Hector. And in an instant, the structural dispute over battlefield honor completely vanishes. The loss of Patroclus shifts Achilles' famous anger from a workplace dispute over pride to a devastating, deeply personal grief.
What makes Achilles' story so gripping is the sheer tragedy of him being a completely aware participant. He deeply understands the system, and he remembers his own fatal prophecy. He knows without a doubt that avenging Patroclus by killing Hector will cement his eternal glory forever, but it will also seal his own doom, ensuring his life ends right there at Troy. He isn't blindly forced into this life by fate alone. He deliberately chooses to return to the battlefield and face Hector. He fully consciously understands that he is trading his own life and his future just for revenge. He's an active participant who willingly embraces the brutal rules by which he is ultimately destroyed.
Let's look at the hidden bargain inside the heroic life laid completely bare. It is a stark, unforgiving trade-off. To receive honor, glory, recognition, and lasting memory, the hero has to give up comfort, privacy, safety, and literally any chance at an ordinary human life. Achilles achieves his vengeance, right? He defeats Hector in this brutal, legendary duel, forever securing his unmatched legacy as the greatest of all warriors. But in doing so, he gives up any possibility of ever returning to his homeland peacefully. The prophecy is fulfilled. The brutal bargain of the heroic life is finalized, proving that immortal existence absolutely requires the sacrifice of a quiet, ordinary one.
The pursuit of meaning demands a very heavy cost, a truth that is just perfectly captured in the quiet aftermath of the battle. The heroic ideal elevates an individual way above the ordinary, but they are so deeply wounded by that very search. This reaches its emotional peak when King Priam of Troy sneaks into the Greek camp right into Achilles' tent. The enemy king begs the man who killed his son for Hector's body. And in this quiet, devastating moment, Achilles and Priam just weep together, one for his lost son, the other for his lost friend and his own impending death. It is such a powerful, heartbreaking illustration of the shared grief and the unbearable human cost of true greatness.
To wrap up this explainer, we really have to look at how this story bridges the ancient world and our present day, leaving us with a lingering question. Are we still running from being overlooked? What is the true cost of being remembered? The tale of the Trojan War and its greatest warrior endures precisely because it serves as a timeless, eternal reflection on our own human desire for significance. Thousands of years later, Achilles remains one of the most famous heroes in world literature. His epic illustrates the immense, captivating power of seeking a life that matters, while simultaneously standing as a stark, tragic monument to the heavy, eternal cost of choosing to be remembered forever. Thanks for joining me on this one.